I'm Black. I'm a feminist. It's complicated. Vinci Communications High School senior Kamryn Washington leads a discussion on how identifying as a feminist or a womanist is complicated when you're also Black. Kamryn is joined by two of her schoolmates and her teacher to share perspectives and experiences to answer the question, is there space for Black women in feminism? This episode is part of In Living Color, a multi-platform storytelling series created for and by Angelenos. We're showcasing the vibrant tapestry of experiences of life in LA by amplifying unique voices, views, and perspectives.
Feminism defined is the advocacy of women's rights on the basis of the equality of the sexes. But does this hold true when it comes to representing women of all intersectionalities? Let's hear from some women of color on their experiences and how it correlates to their opinions on intersectionality and feminism.
This episode is brought to you by the creators of Nina's House of Blues, a short film which steps into the night of a young woman who owns and lives out of an abandoned jazz club. Nina's House of Blues is available on YouTube now.
So now to open the discussion, I'm here with Janan, Madison, and Ms. Dotson. First, how do you guys each navigate through life as a Black woman? How would you say?
That's like a big question. How do I navigate through life? I find I just try and, it's kind of cliche, but I just try and do the best I can. I think there's probably some obstacles that I'm probably going to encounter given, my positionality, but I just try and, use the gifts that I have to do the best I can.
I also like the same thing. I try to just do the best that I can, and something that I do specifically is I try to do more than what other people are doing, because I know that I'm going to be seen, depending on what kind of space I'm in, I know I'm going to be seen as less than or not able to do something in the best of the best that I can because of who I am. So I just overachieve to make sure that you see me as someone who's equal.
I find myself trying to alter the way that I behave sometimes, even though I know that it's not a very good thing, because I know I should try and be myself and just walk around or navigate my way through life just being my true and authentic self. But sometimes I know I can't do that because I'll either be looked at a certain way or labeled as something that I don't want to be labeled at. So right now, currently, the way I'm navigating is trying to unlearn some of those things that I've taught myself to, shelter myself from comments or racism or sexism, even from other people, other women who aren't Black and stuff like that. Well, the way that I see the feminist movement, a lot of it is targeted more towards middle-class, able-bodied white women, and they're not usually people who don't represent that or aren't that specific thing, aren't necessarily represented. And I feel the reason why I align myself with womanism more than feminism is because womanism takes into aspect people who are in different classes, people who have different abilities or disabilities, people who have just different situations in general, whether it's race, nationality or things like that. It might just be what's filtered on my social media or things like that, but a lot of stuff that I see with maybe the hashtag feminism or things to do with feminism, it's something completely unproductive and actually doesn't really matter for the actual fight to gain equality with men and things like that. For example, I know this is a really tired talking point, but I don't care that you dyed your armpits a certain color. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's just so unproductive. I know you want to normalize body hair. That's good, but there are actual people out here going missing and dying on the streets, especially trans women who are being targeted just for specifically being transgender, and you're over here worried about pink armpit hair or stuff like that.
I think it's probably an easier topic to talk about and you don't have to grapple with things like racism, and like maybe if you're complicit in racism and things like that, you probably don't have to grapple with it when you're talking about something like dyeing your armpit hair. And so you can feel really great about making a difference without considering those stickier, like more painful topics. But I also want to say I think there's a space to care about armpit hair and also care about other, like we can care about all of it. I feel like that's also something we could do.
I'll read out the definition because even before me starting this project, I wasn't very familiar with womanism, but I've learned that it's very important for intersectionality and feminism. So I'll read out the definition now. Womanism is a form of feminism that emphasizes women's natural contribution to society. It's used by some in a distinction to the term feminism and its association with white women. Would you, after hearing this definition, do you think that you identify more with womanism as Black women?
Is womanism the same or similar to intersectional feminism?
That's pretty much what womanism is. It was made by women of color, women of other intersectionalities who felt like they weren't represented in feminism to represent, to take the forefront.
Yeah, I think I identify with womanism more in that case.
Yeah, me too as well, because I feel like with feminism, there was like kind of a rift between myself and it. I didn't feel like I could completely agree with every single talking point simply because it focuses on one demographic. So hearing what womanism is and what it could possibly mean for feminism as a whole, I align with it much more.
I'll start with Ms. Dotson because you're the only one of us actually working.
Yeah.
And you're the only Black woman teacher at Vinci Communications.
I know. I feel so lucky.
You wanted to touch on that?
Yeah, I think with feminism, womanism, I think it has had a big impact on my life. I didn't learn much about it until college. It's not something I ever thought about in high school, so that's something that's different. But I do think it has had a positive impact on me. It impacted my perception of myself and also my interactions with other people. And that has varied. That always hasn't been positive, but I think the biggest thing it did for me was help me realize the obstacles that I face are not because of any inferiority in me. It's structural, and that was important.
Before beginning this podcast, I wasn't aware of how womanism and prioritizing intersectionality have become important to so many people other than myself. On a broader scale, more and more Black women are voicing their concerns on the issues within feminism, which is so significant because addressing an issue is always the first step towards making meaningful changes.
This episode was reported and hosted by Kamryn Washington. Video editing and production were done by Tiffany Brown, and original music was composed by Cliff Brown. Special thanks to Santa Monica College's Communications Department for the use of their studio facilities for our recording session. We especially appreciate the coordination and cooperation of Professor Redelia Shaw and broadcast digital media technician Thorne Jorgensen.